everybody, my name is Khristin. This is my channel, Kicking It with Chris. I just finished my first semester of PT school, so I will be going into my second semester of PT school. But overall, I am a first year in physical therapy school. And today, we are going to get into how to get an A, or at least how I got an A in anatomy while in a doctoral program. So if this is the content you came here to see, make sure to keep watching. Real quick, if you are not subscribed to my channel, make sure to hit that red button down below so you can get more content like this, and hit that bell to be notified when I upload my next video. So now on to the video. So I'm gonna split this up into 3 parts where I'm going to talk about lab, I'm going to talk about lecture, and then muscles all by themselves. So that's how I'm gonna split it up. In PT school, we mainly focused on the anatomy part, not so much the physiology part. We have other courses where we're gonna get into like physiology type things. Like we're gonna have a class for exercise phys, we're gonna have a pathology class. So the main focus is really just anatomy and getting good with that. So yeah. And I'm going to insert some clips in because I don't have all of like my notes and everything because I'm home for the holidays. So I'm just going to insert some videos that I took on like Instagram of like some of my anatomy notes. Okay, so first I'm going to start off with lab. So as in Cadaver Lab, we are fortunate enough to have Cadaver Lab. I think a lot of PT schools do. Not every PT school has an actual Cadaver Lab, but fortunately, Hampton does. So we were able to work on cadavers, which if you would like to see a video on my experience with Cadaver Lab, let me know down in the comments. But yeah. So first, we're gonna talk about Cadaver Lab. So I think that to do well on the exams, at least, because it's not like they're 2 separate grades, like they're all one big grade, but they all feed into your grade. So how you do on lab exams or practicals and how you do in written exams or lecture exams. So with the lab exam, when you're working on your cadaver and dissecting your cadaver, it's good to it'll really let you see where the muscle is, which really comes in handy even during lecture because you can kind of just visualize where it is if like you're kind of forgetting an attachment, so you can kind of just see like where it is and like where it's starting and where it's going. So I think it's good for that. When we would be in Cadaver Lab, just being able to point out where muscles are again, so you can have that understanding of where they are. And then but I would say that's like the main good thing about Cadaver Lab is just literally being able to see everything. And when you're in Cadaver Lab, we dissected the whole body from the top to the bottom. Like we dissected the head. We didn't open up the skull or anything, but we dissected the head. So very superficial type stuff, and you can see the skull and everything all the way down to the little feetsies. Like we dissected it all. So you really get to see everything. We opened up the thorax, so you get to see the lungs, the heart. We dissected the heart. We went into the abdominal area, so we were moving around the intestines, got to see kidneys and all of that stuff. We didn't really dissect the pelvic area, so yeah, we didn't really do that. And then we got deep into the back. Well, not deep into the back, but we did get into the back, and we saw the deep layers, but we didn't like dissect all the way through the deep layers of the back. And then we did all of the leg, dissected all of that, and then the foot, and dissected the bottom of the foot, the plantar surface of the foot. So yeah, the Cadaver Lab is something you definitely want to utilize to help you visualize where these muscles are, what it is that they're doing. And yeah, you can see how they're running, so you can get also a better picture. If that's how your brain works, like just seeing how the fibers run, so you can kind of be able to figure out your way as to what they could possibly do. I try to use my brain like that. It doesn't really work for me. I just kind of have to know what they do. Sometimes I can imagine, but it doesn't always work like that. But some people, they can. At least with some things, I can rule out things because it's just like, oh, okay, I know that this muscle doesn't cross two joints. So I know, okay, if it doesn't cross this other joint, then it can't do this. Like that type of thing. But as far as like what it does across the joint that it is crossing, sometimes I just gotta know it. So definitely utilize your Cadaver Lab for that, which will be helpful for practicals because she's just gonna, whoever your professor is, I had a female professor, but they're just going to tag the muscle and they're not gonna always ask you, what is this muscle? They're gonna ask you the distal attachment. Well, in our program, she used proximal and distal, and other programs they're gonna use origin, insertion, same thing. So they'll ask you like, what is the origin, or what is the insertion, what is the innervation, what is the action, and you're expected to be able to look at that muscle and know all of that and answer that question. Another thing that I would say to utilize is if your program has a bone box, to utilize that bone box. We did have a bone box. Utilizing that because sometimes, and I can only speak for Hampton's program because that's where I am at. She would put out a bone and kind of point to a bony landmark. And then say, she might ask like, what is this, like identify this bony landmark, or she might point to the bony landmark and say, what is the distal attachment, aka insertion of this, of the muscle that attaches here. Or, you know, what is the innervation to the muscle who either proximally or distally, or whose origin or insertion is here, like type of thing. So you really want to make sure you know your attachments for your muscles, and you really want to make sure that you know your bony landmark attachments. So you want to check out those bones, make sure you're going through, quizzing your classmates if you're a study group person, if not, quiz yourself of those bony landmarks, because a lot of the times that's what we did. So we would grab a bone box, pull it out, and we'd kind of go through everything, and then we would just call out random bony landmarks, and then we'd have to like point them out, and that's what we would do with each other. So I definitely recommend doing that so you can have a better understanding of those attachment sites. And yeah. And then lastly, like I said, I can only speak for Hampton. For our lab exams, she would utilize pictures because we were a small class, we were a class of 17, so we only had 3 cadavers, so there was only but so much she could do to point out on the bodies with us. So she had to utilize a lot of pictures, so she would utilize cadaver pictures. She would sometimes just put up cross sections. So whatever your professor is doing, make sure to go through those other things if they're not just using the cadavers for you to go off of in the exams. So for us, we would go through cross sections, we would go through blood supply, because sometimes you have big pictures of just blood vessels and you'd have to point out the blood vessel. When we had brachial plexus, she would have the either actual real life brachial plexus, like she might point it out on the cadaver that we had there, or she could have a picture of it. And so you just want to make sure you're going through those things. Yeah, you just want to make sure that you're looking through them. If you can, something that we did at the beginning of the semester that I definitely recommend doing is getting like the templates, whatever your professor uses. If he or she is using pictures, printing out those pictures, putting them in clear sheets, and then writing on them. I have a video of this, so I'll insert that somewhere in here. But doing that, if you have a tablet, doing that same thing, like see if you can white out what's already written on there, and then you can use that as your template on your iPad, because I have an iPad right here, and sometimes I would do that. So I would just kind of, I have the app GoodNotes. So let me see, I should have, this is what I mean by like a cross section. Let's see if you can see that, but yeah. So then I would like just write it in. Let's see. What's another go? Okay, blood vessels. So this will be like a blood vessel picture. And then I would just label it. These were ones that I was trying to do by memory. So I would have the actual picture with the answers. Like these are things from her slides. So I would have the actual picture with the answers pulled up. And so I would try to write them out by memory and then check. That way, when we were doing the carpal bones, so I was naming those. Yeah. So just doing all of those things. Let me see if there's any other good ones. This was another one for like sensory nerves. So kind of just being able to point those out. So just things like that. So just having templates and being able to write out, like, I think that's really good to get practice with it, because, you know, when it comes to the exam, she's just going to point to it and you got to be able to name it. You got to know what it is. You got to know what it is she's pointing at. So those are my tips for lab. Okay, so now we're going to get into lecture. Fun. So like I said, I have an iPad, and I use the GoodNotes app for all of my notes. So I would take notes directly on the PowerPoint. So yeah, so here we have brachial plexus when I was learning it. So just writing in those things. Like I said, I would just take notes on the PowerPoint, straight on the PowerPoint, because I have an iPad with the Apple Pencil, which I definitely recommend getting. The next thing that I would do for lecture specifically is I would go through the lecture and I would make questions straight off of the lecture. So I would have, and my questions really do get into the nitty gritty. I do get into the little details, but I think that helped me. So that's what I did. So I just made questions off of the PowerPoint and I put it in Quizlet so that I can always have it on me, quizzing myself. And I always do learn. Like, I don't really go through the flashcards. I go through the learn. That's how I did it. But you can do the same thing and just go through the flashcards if you just want to answer it yourself. But I would always just use learn. I thought it was a good interactive way for me to answer the questions that, you know, just to answer it. But yeah, I definitely recommend making questions straight from your professor's PowerPoint and then answering it, which you can either copy and paste right from the PowerPoint, so you can learn it that way, or type in your answers, whatever you want to do that. And then the last thing is drawing things out. Again, the other big thing that I did is drawing it out. I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I have to be very hands-on with things. So for me, my notes may seem like I'm going above and beyond, but that's just the way I learn. It's not me trying to be extra. It's not me trying to be an overachiever. It's really just me trying to make sure I understand this information, and that's the best way that I understand that it sinks in, is me drawing things out. So if that's not you, then obviously you don't have to do that. But that's how I do things. That's how my brain brings it all in, is writing it out, drawing it out, things like that. And sometimes I'd write things out on a whiteboard that we would have at school, or just write it out on paper. Notes to always just have it. But if I wanted to like brain dump or anything really quickly, I could do that on the whiteboard, and so I would utilize that. So those were some of the things that I did for lecture. And then lastly, we have muscles. Now I wanted to make a separate section for muscles because they're really kind of in their own lane. You know, doing the muscles is really their own thing. Of course, in Cadaver Lab, you're dissecting, so you're seeing the muscles and things like that. But as far as tackling, learning them, that's really its own field. So a lot of people make note cards, whether that be on Quizlet, whether that be physically, of like the OIAN, origin, insertion, action, innervation, which for us, we would do PDAN or NA. That's how I would kind of do it. I would do the proximal, the distal, the innervation, or PDIA. So proximal, distal, innervation, action. A lot of people do that. That's not what I do. So I will show pictures of what it is that I do. I would draw out the muscles, and then I would write the things, the way I would box them in would be with a specific color, which when I first started it to like what it became changed, but then once I changed it, it became the consistent thing throughout. So like my way of writing it out, and I feel like drawing it helped me to kind of like when I needed to Jimmy Neutron brain blast anything, I felt like I could visualize it in my head. So that's how I did it. And then when it was coming time for me to like memorize, I would have it there to like just flip through, and then I would kind of say it out loud repetitively. So I would start with, okay, what's the proximal or insert origin? Get that down. Okay, then I would go to the innervation, or not innervation, the insertion or distal attachment, and get that down. Go back to the proximal. Then I would repeat the proximal. Like I would kind of go through that, and then once I felt like I had it down, then I would write it out. Now at the beginning of the semester, I would get some white paper, put it in a plastic sheet, and then with an expo marker, write it out on there. So I would do something like this. So proximal, distal, innervation, action for the extensor pollicis brevis. That's what I was doing here. But yeah, so I would do stuff like that on my muscles. And then, like I said, we would kind of quiz each other, like either out loud, like be like, Keith, give me all the things for extensor pollicis brevis. You know, or, you know, Naisha, give me blah, 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 blah. Sometimes we would do it like that, or other times, like I said, we would have the pieces of paper ripped up with the muscles on there. We'd put them out, flipped over, then everyone would grab a piece of paper. They'd go up on the board. If there was more than like 3 of us, then someone might have their own whiteboard, or someone like me, might write it on my iPad. And then once everybody was done, then we'd kind of go through it all to like check, make sure everybody was right. If all of us weren't sure, then we would look at our notes. And I think that was helpful. And I think those are the major points for how I tackled anatomy. That was our biggest credit class. It's not that it's hard, it's just a lot of work. So it's not hard, it's just a lot of information. It's a lot of information, and then when you tie in having to know all the things for the muscles, it can just seem like a lot. Yeah, so you just have to really schedule your time. Again, figuring out how you learn. You know, if you're a visual learner, then you need to make sure you are doing whatever you can to visualize or, you know, see it, which I think is where Cadaver Lab would really come in handy for the visual learner. If you are more of an auditory learner, you know, lecture is where, you know, you can really take all of that in. And then, I don't know. I'm not an auditory learner. I don't learn by listening, hearing, so you'd have to figure out what you need to do with that. If you're the kinesthetic learner like me, you really have to be hands-on with this stuff. So you're gonna look like you're doing a whole lot to some people, but it's really just, you have to do what you have to do in order to learn. And then what else? What other type of learner is there? I don't know. I think we said auditory, visual, kinesthetic, whatever type of learner you are. You just have to go to your strengths, and sometimes that can be hard to figure out, but for me, I have learned how I learn, just being super hands-on with everything, writing out things, drawing out things, or having templates to fill in things, whatever the case may be. Do that. I highly recommend having an iPad. I do think that it is a game changer. It's also not using as much paper, even though I still use a lot of paper. I am a pen and paper gal, so I'll still use pen and paper, but I do think that being able to take your notes, write on your PowerPoints, being able to upload templates and then just write straight from there is very helpful. So those are all my tidbits on how to get an A in anatomy. If you would like to see more content from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Let me know in the comments if there's anything specifically you may want me to go into detail about. If you would like to hear how I did in neuro, if you know, like, also make sure to follow me on Instagram, where once I'm back in school, you'll get more like real-time updates. So I have 2 Instagrams. I have my personal Instagram, where a lot of times I do post some PT stuff on there, at least me and PT school. So like that's my captain Casey _. My PT school dedicated page is KC's, so KCS _ journey to DPT. You can follow both of those Instagrams to see how things are going for me. Yeah, but specifically, if there's anything you would like me to make a video on, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. If there's any, like, if you want me to go into more detail about brachial plexus, I definitely can, about how I tackled that. And if there's anything else that you want to see me on how I kind of tackled it, learned it, I can definitely do that. And so yeah, just let me know that in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And again, if you are not subscribed to my channel, make sure to hit that red bell button down below. Until next time, guys, love you. Bye.